Hello, 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 friends. It's Nicholas here with DIVO-Ted Talks, DIVOted Talks, where we take ancient wisdom and modalities and methodologies and put a modern twist on it and translate it for our unique and individual needs so that we can have better lives together. So, speaking of having better lives, I'm very frustrated. Just things feel cranky. And I'm not just saying I'm cranky, but like, I can't get the iMovie to do what I want it to do. And then people are repeating things back to me that I already know. And I'm just like, I know. And then there's this feeling of having to explain the self, or they're trying to explain their self. And it's just this like, why? But we don't exist in a vacuum. We cannot exist in a vacuum. And that's just not the way of the world. I mean, you could kind of maybe live off grid, but even that's kind of dangerous. Like, what if something happens to you? How would you get medical attention if you needed it? Or if something happened, who would be there to check on you? I mean, geez, life is very, very interconnected. And so some days are cranky. The trick is being able to read the energies. And some people do that through astrology. Some people do that through Jyotish. Some people do that through different oracle or tarot or other divination tools. And that's cool. But, I feel like there's some up and down and frazzled edges. And some days are better than others. And, when the studio has been kind of slow, I don't necessarily always know what to do with myself because there's so many things I could do. And that has a lot to do with me not being tuned into my greater purpose, me not necessarily being as tuned into what I want to see happen. And so with that comes lots of strings and challenges, and there's nothing wrong with it. It's just being able to recognize my part in it so that I have the least amount of blowback, least amount of friction and agitation in the process. And in that, I won't be causing that towards other people, right? Because, if we show up well for ourselves, we definitely show up well for others. And there are people who deplete and exhaust themselves trying to show up well for others and completely neglect themselves in the process. And so getting clear as to what that looks like, how that plays out, and how we are supposed to navigate life well, right? There is no pre-programmed destination. There is no guarantee about what it will look like. There is our best attempt, and then we see where it lands, and we go pick up our arrow, because I'm a Sagittarius, and shoot again. And that works for me. But sometimes it's frustrating because there are times when you really need something to work out, and when it's not happening, it becomes this rife situation, rife with anxious, rife with frustration, rife with just, it doesn't smell good. It doesn't feel good. The essence of it is kind of, right? And so how do we work within that framework? Well, first thing is that we give ourselves a break. We are human, and in some cases there are lives depending on us. And if we do what we're supposed to do, or if we are resourceful and figure out how to get help to do the things that need to be done, then that may save us time, energy, and well-being later on by handling it through those resourceful means. Now, how do I bring this back into, the greater essence of yoga and Ayurveda? Unprocessed emotions, unprocessed thoughts, feelings, actions build up. They push our dosha out of whack. They allow disease to fester within the body. And if there happens to be kavaguṇyas, defective spaces, that's a terribly one-dimensional way of calling them. There's so much more, because they might actually be a physical space that is defective, but it also could be just an energetic thing that isn't quite flowing properly. And so these kavaguṇyas become this nest for dosha and or other things that aren't processed. And ama might be the unprocessed metabolic waste, mind, body, or spirit. And it just sits there and it becomes this goo, and it becomes this soil for which things can grow from, whether it be frustration, anger, hatred, things that just don't really feed us or feed others. And what we do is we work on removing excess dosha. And one of the things we do that by is living rightly. Like if you give yourself the right calm and dinacharya and, day-to-day routine, it makes it more likely that you won't have this excess dosha. You won't have these emotions and feelings and thoughts that build up in negative ways, but rather you, in the moment that they arise, are able to deal with them and process them right then so that it doesn't build up and there isn't a backlog. Because, right, sometimes we get so filled up that later we're just like, you know what, I'm just going to go to bed. And we go to bed and we wake up feeling better, but we haven't processed it. It's still lingering and settling there. But there is a tipping point where we become so full, we become so replete that we're about to burst at the seams with all of these excesses and undigested things. And so one of the ways that we can relieve ourselves of that is through pañcakarma. This is the removing of excess dosha from the system, whether it be from seasons or from just a lifetime of thoughts and feelings. Thoughts and prayers. What about thoughts and feelings? And so pañcakarma is amazing, but it's maybe not easily accessed, right? Like maybe your practitioner isn't nearby here. Maybe there aren't any good practitioners anywhere near you, and going to India or someplace that they practice them isn't necessarily an option. There are simple and easy things you can do at home that help you build your digestive fire. Remember, it's not just your stomach, it is the agni. And agni comes at different forms and different levels, and it's all about digesting what comes into the body. Now, you might think, but thoughts are inside the body. Yes, but they have to go through the layers of self, whether it's mind, body, or spirit, to be processed as well. So even though a thought may originate here, once you've thought about it, it kind of cycles its way back into you. Kind of like your sinus produces mucus, but then it excretes mucus after it's been processed. So, and the reason I brought that up is because I had to have a major sinus surgery. I told you guys I had a sinus infection that was kind of weighing on me. I'm feeling better-ish. But no matter where the thing originates, it's about it being a part of us and having to be digested. And so sometimes we have things that have been captured within us from childhood or for ever and ever and ever that it feels like it's part of us. Somebody might call that baggage, right? And sometimes, and actually probably the majority of the time, the baggage that people have wasn't theirs to begin with. It was handed down, and nobody ever questioned why it was there in the first place. They just knew that it was heavy. But they packed it up and moved it with them. I mean, I did that when I was moving houses many times, after college. Like every year I would move in July, and I would just move boxes and stuff, and then I would kind of unpack, collect more stuff, and then put it all in boxes and move it again. That's the process that I'm talking about right here. And so what you filled yourself with, if in moments of fatigue or, lack of resilience, it can really break you down and push you down, and then things will bust through the surface, right? When you're put under pressure, what comes out? Well, whatever you've been filling yourself, that's what comes out. So, we joke about it being human insides, but really you've been filling yourself with thoughts and feelings and exposure to things. So, we used to talk about how kids were being influenced by the violent video games they were playing. And that's true, right? They were observing violence, and then that's what they were full of because that's all that they had been consuming. And so yoga is asking us to consume wisely things that are sattvic, that keep us harmonious and keep us in balance. And sometimes to get back to a sattva, you do require rajas or tamas or a combination of all three, right? The three mahagunas, which are the three main gunas out of the evolutes that come after universal consciousness. And they are kind of the giant influencing factors for everything we do. I hope I'm saying that right. So don't quote me completely. I'm pretty sure. Sankhya philosophy is one of my favorites, but I just want to make sure that I'm saying it clearly before I talk on and on and on about it. But just sometimes it takes an opposite or a combination of gunas to help create that harmonious and balanced and sustainable state of harmony or wellness. All right, my friends, I'm going to leave you there. Just things to think about. Whatever you fill yourself with is what's going to come out when you're under stress. Be well, be free, and keep those doshas clear. Keep those systems clear, and watch out for kavaguṇyas.